I'm Llewellyn King, the host of ME CFS Alert. I'm in Rentham, Massachusetts, where I'm going to be talking to Robert Robitaille, whose daughter is severely afflicted with this ghastly disease, and he has been doing yeoman work, essential work, very, very important work on the relationship between patients and the Social Security Administration for disability benefit. It has not been easy for him. It is not easy for anyone who has the disease. It is hard to diagnose. Generally, it goes undiagnosed or people are egregiously ill. And as a result, the authorities, the bureaucrats, if I might be so rude, at the Social Security Administration are not always knowing or helpful. Welcome to the broadcast, Bob.
Thank you.
And what have you learned? When did you apply for your daughter, and how long has it taken?
So she first applied when she moved back here to Massachusetts. She moved back in March of last year. And
she'd been living in Texas.
She had been living in Texas 9 years, I think.
Right,
And she was on a farm in the middle of the country, in the middle of Texas, and really the doctors out there, country doctors, never heard of ME, but that's not unusual because we know that a lot of doctors
A lot of urban doctors have never heard of it.
Right. And so anyway, when she moved back, we decided that she had run out of money and just decided this was a place for her to be. Boston was the greatest place. We had all the greatest doctors, the greatest hospitals. And so we moved her back, and our initial findings were that that knowledge wasn't out there like we thought it would have been here in Boston. So we went through the Social Security process starting in April of last year. She applied, so it's a three-step process. The first step is a simple application, and I think she had a phone conversation as well, like a half-hour interview. And so Ken Casanova, who is our Social Security advocate at ME CFS Associates,
That's the old Massachusetts CFS.
the old Mass CFS, right? And Ken has written an 80-page paper on...
I might say, I could interject, a very active and very effective patient organization in Massachusetts, one of the most prominent of the state organizations of advocacy and help.
Right, yeah, and we have a lot of terrific people like Ken, who was inflicted in 1981, and he's been a patient ever since. He had 7 bad years, he ran into a couple of good years, and now he's been bad again. So anyway, but he's been past president twice, and he's quite an individual, and he came out with this 80-page paper, which basically is like a thesis paper on how to deal with the Social Security and how to apply. So we read that, and Roby put that first application in April, like I said. It got denied within a few weeks. So the second process is to go what they call reconsideration, or like an appeal process. And she put that in, and it was very difficult because it involved a lot of work. We put in an 80-page document.
And this is very difficult for patients.
It is.
Particularly if they have cognitive problems
It
as
is.
a result of their
It's
disease.
brain fog and all that other stuff that goes with it. But she's fortunate in a way. She's had my wife and I to help her with these things, but there are so many patients out there that don't have that ability. And so we put this 80-page paper together. I thought it was a home run because we went into a lot of detail. Her primary care physician wrote a 5-page letter stating how she not necessarily had ME, but she couldn't work. And so we submitted that, and then a few weeks later we got the answer that she was denied again. And then the third step of that process is to go to the judge level, where you need to basically hire an attorney. And Ken Casanova provided us with an attorney to talk to out of Framingham, Massachusetts, and she was very nice, and she handled the case from there on and submitted, I think, back in January, and said initially that it might take till the end of 2018 to...
So it was April 2017 this began.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So now we're over a year later, year and a half almost. And so she said it would almost take till the end of this year to get in front of a judge. Well, in May she called and said that it looks like we're going to get it in with a judge sooner. She did. And what's interesting is she downsized that document, which was a lot of lab results from her Roby's previous doctor's appointments, and the attorney downsized the document. I don't know to how many pages, but she didn't send that whole thing in. So it was less of a document than what we
Are
had
these
submitted.
specialized attorneys that practice before the Social Security Administration, or these are general attorneys?
Well, this is a general attorney,
Yeah,
but she handles primarily ME/CFS.
okay.
Okay, and she's
Right.
had a good portfolio of doing that. So,
I would think that's quite important that the.
Oh, there's no doubt about it.
Has some understanding. This is not a disease.
Right.
Explained in 5
oh yeah,
minutes.
yeah, you just don't want to go to an attorney who doesn't know the disease. I mean, there's a whole lot of history, as we know, that goes with that. And so anyway, that was the last step that we took, going and hiring the attorney. And we got word in June that the judge had looked at the paperwork and she had approved Roby's appeal, so, or reconsideration, the third time. And so with that, there are 5 steps that the Social Security Administration takes in the process for determining disability, okay? So we learned this, when I say we, the CFSAC, you familiar with CFSAC? The Chronic Fatigue System Advisory Committee out of DC. They're comprised of FDA, HHS, CDC. And I went to the first session a year and a half ago in DC. I flew down there and just attended, got invited by Charmian Proskauer, who's the president of MassHealth. And it was a very interesting meeting for me because I didn't realize there were so many active government people talking about this issue, which seemed to me before that like nobody knew about it, wanted to discuss. But they have a meeting every 6 months, and I've been following the meetings since. I haven't been down there myself, but I've learned that the meetings seem to rehash the same old thing. And in the meeting back in December, the Social Security Administration representative talked about the process and all that. So she talks about the 5 processes. So number 1 is a person currently working. Okay, in Roby's case, she wasn't. If they are working, if they make over $1,100 a month, they can't even apply. 2, is this a severe impairment? And I don't think anybody would disagree that it isn't. Number 3, and I think this is the most important step, does the impairment or combination of impairments meet established medical criteria? So there is no established medical criteria. There's no biomarkers, there's no blood tests, there's no litmus tests that can prove one way or the other that a person has this disease or doesn't. The 4th step is, can the person perform their previous work? In Roby's case, the answer is definitely no, and that was asserted by her primary care physician. And the last step, does the person have the functional ability to work at the level of substantial gainful activity in any type of other work? And what they do is they say, can you lift 20 pounds? Can you stand 6 hours a day? And you know, in Roby's case, there's no way.
And most, very few patients are going to pass that test on a good day.
Right, I know, and that's the problem. And for some reason, so the first 2 steps that I was talking about are administered by the state. And the second step in particular is by a panel of doctors. And they should know when they read the material that we've submitted, especially, that it's an issue for the patient to be able to do the kinds of things that are required to do a job. And, you know, unless you live with it like we have for the last year and a half, you just don't understand it. So anyway, so I was going to talk about the issues as I see them, okay, with these steps. Number 1, the medically determinable impairment. Again, that is, to me, the primary issue, because there's no litmus test. People say, well, you're not really sick, it might be all in your head or whatever. And so that's a big issue. The second one, the CFS related claims, for whatever reason, have decreased from the year 2000, I'm sorry, from the year 2002, they've decreased from 2,000 then to 500 in 2000.
Do you think this is because people have given up? That the process,
yeah, well, that has a lot to do with it.
And
I suspect there are other reasons that, you know, maybe people are giving up for different reasons, like the Social Security Administration. Maybe when they go visit them,
they can't afford a lawyer.
Right, and they can't afford a lawyer.
Lawyers are not cheap.
Yeah. So the third issue is that the process takes way too long. So in our case, in Roby's case, it was a year and a half almost, and she still hasn't gotten her money yet. So she's still waiting and supposedly coming in September. So we'll see what happens then. But
and then she'll get a regular check with all this work?
Right. So she's going to get a check that's dated back to, see, they go back to the point where you submit the April 2017. Then they take away the first 5 months of that eligibility for whatever reason. So really from 1 August 2017 to now is a year. She's going to get a year worth of check minus 25% that the lawyer takes out. And there's a max there, and I'm not sure what the max is. And then in addition to that, so all that is with regard to SSDI, which is disability. There's also another one called SSI, which if somebody hasn't worked and put into the system, they're not insured like you were if you were paid for your insurance, basically. So then the state covers you under a different aspect, but it's on an on-need basis. And if, for example, you're living with parents and you haven't put into the system and you can't be covered by SSDI, if the parents are footing the bill, whether at home or for an apartment someplace, that is not considered something that the government will replenish at some point. So to me, the total system is unfair. And by comparison, by the way, MassHealth, Roby called...
Let's, for the benefit of viewers across the country and the world, MassHealth is the state system in Massachusetts.
Right, it's the state Obamacare, basically.
Right.
It was Romney that brought that up back then, before Obamacare. That's correct. So when Roby got back in March of 2017, she applied for MassHealth, and within 2 days, she got approved.
And that covers the doctor.
That covers the doctors. Now, it's not, I have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and maybe MassHealth doesn't cover the percentages that my Blue Cross Blue Shield does, but they've done a great job. It's been totally nothing out of pocket, and they've been tremendous. They really have. And that process took 2 days, okay? So the year and a half that it took us to get approved for Social Security disability, other people, I've heard stories of 3 or 4 years. And you know, what do those people do in the meantime? And Roby's lucky they've had here to leave, but these people are basically homeless and, you know.
Yeah, all right, I was going to say, take patient X, some patient, very limited resources, not very sophisticated, and very sick.
Right.
What can that person do? If they're stranded without money, without legal help, over physically to the local Social Security Administration, who I've always found very nice to deal with.
Yeah, and I have too.
Do you go there and say, I need help?
Right, I mean, I don't think there's any other alternative at that point. I mean, you can always call an organization if you're in Massachusetts or close to Mass, like MassHealth, the old MassHealth, now the MassME, CFS Association. But you know, we can help provide guidance on how to submit something to the Social Security. But again, it gets to be a lot of work. We put together that 80-page paper, and it's not to be taken lightly.
Now, where can people get in touch with you to get information and to get the 80-page paper, or at least a synopsis of the 80-page?
Right. So I keep saying MassHealth because we've had that name for a long time, but the new name is MassME/CFS Association. There's a website, .org. It's massmecfs.org, and there's tons of information on there. We have the pediatric primer that Alan wrote, and with some other doctors. So the guy I mentioned earlier, Ken Casanova, he wrote this 80-page Social Security paper. It's online for free, so you can just download it.
Well, that's very important.
It is.
Since you've been working on this issue, how many other stories have you heard?
Oh, it's well. First of all, I got to say that the people in MassME Association are tremendous. A lot of them are patients, and a lot of them have struggled for 20, 30, in some cases 40 years with this disease, and it's a terrible thing. And it's nice to have support, and we do a lot together. In May, I was involved with Susan Buckley, who's also a parent of a son that has ME. she and I flew to DC and we met with 9 state reps, I should say state rep offices, and the 2 Senate offices. And actually, Representative McGovern and I forget, Keating actually came to the meetings. And McGovern spent 45 minutes with us. It was a tremendous visit. Our objective was to spread awareness, and we had planned this since last year. We had been doing, making phone calls and conference calls to prep them on what we were going to do. So we've done a lot of advocacy.
Have they written to Social Security Administration? Have they raised the issue directly with the government?
Well, we haven't got to that step yet. Okay, the next thing to do is to organize what we can help Congress to do, and that's where we are at now. We're kind of at we took the summer off after a heavy workload the first part of the year, so that'll be our next step with DC. And it's interesting that so many people in the DC area that listen to us. We're just so intense on this subject.
What can patients do to help you speak for them?
Well,
on the Social Security issue,
the best thing you could do is actually contact your state rep. There's 9.
Your member of Congress.
Right. There's 9 districts in Massachusetts, and again, we saw everyone in 2 days, and it'd be good if you just called. And chances are you won't get to see him or her, but you're going to be able to talk to somebody, either the health liaison or one of his staff members.
People are nervous calling Congress. Is there some sort of primer they can have in front of them that you issues to?
That's a good point. We do, when we prep
most people are not used to
right.
negotiating with members of Congress,
yeah.
And are nervous and feel somewhat guilty for taking the time.
Right.
So if they had something in front of them, possibly a very simple sheet with some questions and a quick explanation, that might be helpful.
That's a good point, because we did all that for our trips to DC and the previous conference calls. And Rivka Solomon, who has experience with DC, she used to be a staffer down in DC. She lives up here in Massachusetts now, and she's one of the patients. Have you met Rivka?
Yes,
yeah. And so she had that all experience, and so Susan and I were the foot soldiers going to DC, but she was the person with the disease and also with the knowledge, and she prepped us. So it's a good point in the sense that we do have that material. We should put that online for other people to look at.
Yes, and this is how a lot of lobbying is done. It's overdone,
right,
in terms of letters that are pre-written. There's something to refer to when you're on a phone call and you're nervous and you're unsure,
right,
and you don't want to waste anybody's time, and you don't want to waste that call,
yep,
because you may not get another one.
Yep.
Particularly if you reach the member of Congress.
Right.
And I would say something to patients. I was for nearly 50 years a reporter in Washington, and the thing is, if you can get through the gatekeepers, there are people who will listen to you, and members of Congress are not always as busy as their staffs say they are. I used to find there would be a senator sitting there wondering why nobody called him, because his staff was so effective at cutting them all off. And he would say, "Oh, good to see you. How did you get here?" Knowing that he had set up this. So it's this room at the top. So try to get through to the representative or to the senator if you possibly can. But the staffs can be very helpful. Do not be intimidated by Congress. They are employed by you, and they will listen to you.
And oh, by the way, you don't have to go to DC to do this. We started last year in phase 1, May of 2017. We actually went to the local offices here in Massachusetts. We knocked on the door. Well, we made appointments, but we got there and knocked on the door, and in most cases we talked to a staffer, which is fine, because getting that foot in the door is the important thing, and then the staffer can link with the person in DC that you want to see too.
And the other thing is, they need issues.
Mm-hmm.
People don't always understand this. Members of Congress need issues.
Right.
Each one needs their own issue. And if you can get them to take up your cause as their issue, it gives them a lot of leverage in the Congress.
Right.
We can see it, for example, how Senator Gillibrand from New York has ridden the issue of sexual harassment in the military to national prominence.
Mhm.
They do need issues.
Mhm.
They like an issue that they can understand and that
Yep.
they can get a feeling for. The other thing I think with this disease is, as with many diseases, if you can find somebody who knows somebody who has it,
Right.
a family member, you have an ally.
Mhm.
And that's very important, I think.
Yep.
And I think that if you ask around, once you get to know somebody in college, somebody will receive your calls, even if it is an aide, a staffer. If you say, do you know anybody yourself who's got this disease, that can make a huge difference, I found.
Right. Oh, no, there's no question about it. And I think you asked earlier about the organization. One of the best things for me to take on this organization is that there are so many people, a lot of them patients, but they work hard, they work together to their capacity. I mean, some of them can't do a lot, but it's so enlightening, and for me, it's inspirational. And, so I do advocacy, my wife does patient services, and Roby does the patient support group. And so as a family, we're all involved, and we got people like Rivka and Shami, and it's an amazing person, and Alan. It's an amazing experience, and it's very nice.
Well, that's great. I wish you a lot of luck, and thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you. Well, thank you for what you do for MECFS, and thank you for coming to Rentham.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you.
So much.
Thank you.
Robert.